Hello and welcome everyone to the talk Ertuğrul Goes East, Turkey Rising in South Asia, jointly hosted by the Middle East Institute and the Institute for South Asian Studies, both located here at the National University of Singapore. My name is Ameem Lutfi, and I'm a research fellow at the MEI, and I will be your moderator for what promises to be an exciting discussion on the ever-evolving ties between Turkey and three South Asian countries with large Muslim populations, namely India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. The pairing of these two regions on the surface seems odd because the Turkey and South Asia, if one looks at a map, appear to be disconnected by the arduous Central Asian terrains on one side and Persia on the other. But in the longer historical arc, fates of the two regions have long been interconnected through the movement of people, ideas, and empires. Of late, we have seen this neo-Ottomanist aspirations of the AKP-led Turkish government instrumentalize some of these shared legacies for their own expansionist aspirations and geopolitical goals. Through cultural exports such as the soap opera based on the little-known Central Asian tribal chief and progenitor of the Ottoman lineage, Ertuğrul Gazi, who sort of happens to be in the title of the talk today, Turkey is slowly expanding its soft power eastwards and perhaps filling a gap left by the reorientation of Salafi influences from the Persian Gulf. But is this really only a one-way street? To what political ends might South Asian states be interested in mobilizing these different episodes from this shared history for their own political ends? What uncertainties do this new relations or the emerging relations hold for the region, specifically considering what has been going on in Afghanistan and sort of the uncertainties around that area? How will these ties impact some of the hot issues within South Asia, namely Kashmir or the Rohingya crisis? Moreover, beyond geopolitics, how are these ties going to remake the cultural dynamics and also the political sort of balances internally within both Turkey and the South Asian states? It is to address some of these questions and shed light on the contemporary Turkey-South Asia relationships in perspective or in light of the past. We have our four esteemed speakers today who would like to cordially invite and welcome to this talk jointly hosted by MEI and ISAS. So thank you so much for joining us today. It gives me great pleasure to briefly introduce the four speakers, and I won't take much time in this. We will start the discussion with Dr. Gurul Baba, who's an associate professor in the political science faculty department of international relations at the Social Science University of Ankara. From Turkey, we then turn to Pakistan with Dr. Farooq Solaria, who's an assistant professor at the Beacon House National University in Lahore. And from Bangladesh, thirdly, we go to, from Pakistan, thirdly, we go to Bangladesh with Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhry, an honorary fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore, and a longtime principal research fellow at ISAS. Last but not the least, we end with Dr. Umer Anas from Ankara Yildirim Beyazıt University to talk about India's relationship with Turkey. Each speaker will have about 15 minutes to present, to sort of lay out their talk and present their, to lay out this presentation. At the end of those, sort of when we reach around 13 minutes or when there's a few minutes left, you'd receive a message from the events team. So just to the speakers, note to the speakers, just keep an eye out for that as a reminder. So we will keep to that strict 15 minutes limit. And at the end of the talk, we'll have about 45 minutes that for discussions and question and answers. So without much further ado, let me invite Dr. Gurul Baba to unmute himself and start this presentation. So welcome, Dr. Gurul Baba.
Thank you, Ameem, Dr. Lutfi. Thank you for the introduction. When I received the invitation from your institution, I wasn't actually quite sure how to frame Turkey's outlook towards South Asia, because Turkey has a quite a big, widespread outlook towards the whole Asia-Pacific region. So I started reading the literature, or actually, in other words, rereading the literature. What I saw, there are like two cliches in the literature regarding Turkey's opening to Asia. There are two concepts that the literature and the policy actions and the policy framework of Turkey has been going through. The two cliche concepts are alternatives and opportunities. Turkey's foreign policy framework or opening to Asia has been rolling over these two concepts: alternatives, alternative to the Western alliance, alternative to the previous allegiances, and also the opportunities that Asia Pacific region has been offering to like proactive middle powers like Turkey. Then I said these cliche terms would not really give a theoretical framework about Turkey's opening to South Asia, and so I looked for another conceptual framework, which I added to the title, which is geopolitics versus geoculture versus geoeconomics. And I think Turkey's foreign policy, Turkey's opening to South Asia, and the relations that it has been managing in the region can be formulated within this versus structure. When I say geopolitics, I mean security, strength, conflicts, and coalitions. When I say geoculture, it's like prestige, exchange, cultural influence, similarity or difference in religious faiths. And when I say geoeconomics, I mean growth, development, trade, investment, dependence. So I think today the talk and especially the discussions are going to revolve around these terms. All these three concepts, geopolitics, geoculture, and geoeconomics, all these three concepts in justice and development parties, which is going to be my main pillar of explaining Turkey's relations with South Asia, are determined. All these three concepts are determined by the domestic political needs of the JDP, which is the Justice and Development Party. That's how I'm going to use it so far. And foreign policy as diplomacy comes second in GDP's domestic political needs, especially regarding its opening to South Asia. Foreign policy's economic and commercial segments are more predominant in JDP's opening to the region. Foreign policy's cultural elements, particularly the Islamic cultural elements, do serve GDP's domestic policy sometimes even more than the economic side of things. So geopolitics versus geoculture versus geoeconomics framework tells us the geoculture has a significantly predominant role in Turkey's opening to the region. Although the engine sounds like geoeconomics, even today in this talk's title, we see Ertuğrul, which is a part of Turkey's geoculture. You named it as the soft power. Now, it's a bit like Eckhart Tolle's argument of the primacy of domestic politics, and that's how we see the JDP has been organizing its policymaking and policy applications in the region. Now, where do we actually see the predominance of geoculture? Well, we see it in President Erdoğan's speeches, like during a ceremony at the centenary of the death of Ottoman Sultan Abdülhamit II, Erdoğan said that the Republic of Turkey is a continuation of the Ottomans. Of course, the borders have changed, forms of government have changed, but the essence is the same. Soul is the same, and even many institutions are the same. These emphasis underline the importance of geoculture in Turkey's relations with the region, which we particularly see in Turkey's relations with Pakistan. And so what it does is Erdoğan has been reinventing himself as some sort of a protector of the Muslims, or some sort of a new champion of Islamism. In addition to this geocultural element, which is more like the Islamist understanding of Erdoğan's foreign policy, we actually have a more formidable underpinning of Erdoğan's foreign policy, which is pragmatism. So another important element regarding Turkey's relations with Asia which can be located in the geo-economic side of things, is Erdoğan has been trying to compartmentalize issues by pushing political and strategic clashes to the back carriages of the relations and uses economic and financial relations as the steam engine. So Erdoğan administration, this type of a geo-economic and geocultural understanding and paradigm of relations with the region makes Erdoğan administration sometimes misread the regional parameters and the balances of power. In other words, the geopolitics of the region. Since the hot money flow to Turkey is the main element of this opening to the region, as I said, that would lead to Erdoğan administration to misread the geopolitics of the region. All right, so this type of a geocultural and geo-economic understanding and motivation of Turkey's relations with Asia is also caused by the growing anti-Western tilted focus in the Turkish foreign policy since especially 2007. There are many reasons. If I need to touch upon some of them, is Turkey's anti-Westernism, the opportunities coming from the region for the like middle powers like Turkey, relations with the EU pushing Turkey to the east, relations with the US strained particularly in the last decade, and Turkey's proactivism, which is sometimes causing it to punch above its weight. Regarding the policy initiatives, we have three policy initiatives, which I think the other speakers are going to talk about. And these three initiatives, one of them is in 2019 called the Asia and New Initiative, which was proposed by the Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs with the motivation of the Turkish presidency. I was a part of one of their meetings talking about how can we actually increase our relations with the region in general Asia and Pacific. There were some very flashy words used during the meeting, and we also hear very similar flashy words from Nilvana Drama, who is the head person of that initiative, the ambassador Nilvana Drama, talking about the systematic and a comprehensive focus to access the region. The initiative, the 2019 initiative, involves soft power assets, conflict resolution methods, economic tools, and defense industry relations with the region. As you can see, the main motivation is the geoeconomics, although it is, again, a very significant focus in Ambassador Drama's and during the meetings of the 2019 initiative that Turkey has always been an Asian country. It has really strong geocultural links with the region. Turkey's roots extend into Asia, and these roots are cultural and historical. As you can see, there is a bit of an amalgamation between geoeconomics and also geoculture in all these type of statements, official statements of the Turkish authorities. The second initiative regarding Turkey's opening to the region is the Middle Corridor project. It's like an interconnectivity project, like the Chinese Belt of Road, and a few parts of the literature talks about the compatibility of Turkey's Middle Corridor project with Chinese Belt and Road, which aims to create a connectivity between the East-West corridor and North-South corridor, and tries to link the Turkish territory to Central Asia via Transcaucasia, and aims to, as I said, to integrate it with the Chinese Belt and Road, which would extend that interconnectivity to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and China. Another initiative is TASAM's initiative, which is a Turkish presidency supported think tank. It could be named as the third initiative. Also, it's not very official, but it underlines the importance of links or building up ties with South Asia, which obviously had a significant cultural background in the Ottoman period or the War of Independence or even the Republican era in the Turkey geocultural realm. And that's what TASAM also underlined. And in in TASAM's initiative, as I said, it's some sort of a semi-official initiative. It underlines the fields of tourism, trade fairs, trade days, and also increasing the Turkish exports to the region in order to reduce the imbalance regarding the trade deficit, and also some counter-terrorism cooperation between Turkey and the regional countries. So as you see, Turkey's foreign affairs with South Asia, all these initiatives has some multiple tracks. Not only the diplomatic channels that Turkey would like to use, but also commercial organizations and firms all wrapped up in a cultural framework, as we label today's call with Ertuğrul. Let me go a little bit further and say that the expectation of the Turkish current administration, the JDP administration, is that these organizations, the commercial organizations, the firms, which is like the second track diplomatic elements, should be more influential than the official state channels, i.e. the diplomatic channels. Let me just touch upon in like a few minutes before I finish my talk, Turkey's relations with South Asian countries. Afghanistan is possibly today's hot topic. It is both a showground and a minefield for Turkey to show its importance to both Western, let's say, bloc and Eastern, let's say, bloc. To show its importance in the sense that Turkey is still a very important asset for both blocs. And you may also know, Turkey's most significant foreign policy asset is its armed forces, and which the JDP administration do not hesitate to use, as we saw in Syria. And Turkey's position in Afghanistan was initiated with this asset. The thing is, Afghanistan policy of Erdoğan administration is a bit like a reaction to its strain in Turkish-US relations in order to show the US how important that is. I'm not going to go any further because I've got the notification that I have like 3 minutes. We may talk about this later. Relations with India, on the other hand, is very well known that relations with India has been overshadowed by Turkey's geocultural relations with Pakistan. So Turkey sees India from Pakistan's lenses, from the geocultural perspective, but from geoeconomics perspective, the new ambassador, Frans Sunel, Turkish new ambassador, has been telling that we don't need to reset our relations. We can still compartmentalize it and we can develop our trade. That's how Turkey sees its relations with India. Pakistan obviously has been developing, especially from this geocultural Islamic sense of reading relations, especially with the defense ties. Pakistan and Turkey's relations within that realm about the defense time is quite formidable. And Bangladesh is like some sort of a Turkey's footprint in South Asia. It's the second largest trade partner in the region after India, with 1 billion of a trade volume. And again, with Bangladesh, Turkey is using its very important asset, the defense industry and the armed forces, in order to develop its relations with Bangladesh. And they are sort of like supporting each other. Before I wrap things up, let me just underline my main conceptual framework that Turkey's relations with the region has been heavily focused on the geocultural affinities and also pushed by Turkey's needs in geoeconomics in order to bring more hot money into the Turkish economy, which causes the Turkish administration to misread and even cross the geopolitical realities and the balance of power in the region, particularly regarding the India-Pakistan relations, has been Turkey tilted towards Pakistan in the Kashmir issue. It was a big topic. I tried to keep it as succinct, as concise as possible. So let's just take it as a conceptual framework for the rest of the talk. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baba. I mean, you had a very difficult task of laying out, this very complicated geography, or sort of, these three-pronged relations between Turkey and India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So, I mean, you've given us a very clear and succinct framework that hopefully we can sort of further build on and elaborate in the three remaining talks. With that, I want to invite Dr. Farooq Solaria to unmute himself and turn on his camera and start his presentation. Dr. Solaria. Dr. Solaria might, if can you hear me? If not, we can maybe, if possible, we can get in touch with him, and we can if we can skip Pakistan and come back to it later. Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry, if you are present, would you mind going in second?
Yes, I seem to have lost the camera. Good heavens. Okay, thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. Thanks for the invite. My perspective will be broadly historical. I'll do so in broad brushes. It's a difficult topic. Turkey, South Asia, a huge subject. But let me begin with the concept of soft power. Soft power has always existed as a factor in. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. Sorry, just yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
I think Dr. Farooq Solaria is here.
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Solaria, we couldn't get in touch with, so we'll go to you next after Dr. Chaudhry.
Okay, as a concept, soft power from time immemorial has played a role in international relations. This was conceptualized as a foreign policy tool by Professor Joseph Nye. He introduced the term as we now understand it in his writings in the 1980s and 90s, fully expanding its connotation in his 2004 book, Soft Power. The means to succeed in international politics, that's what he called his book. To him, basically, it implied the capacity of a state actor to get others to behave in a desired fashion without resorting to hard power or military force. A perfect example of this in contemporary times would be the use of the purpose of the film or series Diriliş, Ertuğrul by Turkey, which is, of course, as you have heard, a historical fiction based in the 13th century. Now, the storyline is one of a near epic struggle and journey of the Turkic nation, a Turkish version in many ways of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, perhaps. Ertuğrul represents the sensibilities of the Trojan prince Hector and the valor of the Greek hero Achilles, all rolled into one. It conjures up nostalgic memories of the glorious and romantic past of the ethnic and religious halcyon days of the Turkish people. The empire's last sultan, Abdul Majid, was removed by the Turks themselves under Mustafa Kemal Pasha Ataturk, father of the nation. By then, the Ottoman Empire had declined to the point of having earned the cognomen of the sick man of Europe. For Kemal Pasha, the Ottoman Caliphate had outlived its utility, and he was persuaded that it needed to be supplanted by a nationalist, modern, and secular polity in a bid to anchor itself more to modern European ethos. Now, these values of Kemal Pasha and of the young Turk revolutionaries were preponderant in Turkey almost till the coming to power of the current president, Recep Erdoğan. While the shift towards Islam occurred almost as a slow and inexorable process, the new post-Kemalist Islamic-oriented leadership saw merit in hearkening back to the past and tapping history to advance Turkey's global projections as an Islamic power. Now, the earlier developments, the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of the Young Turks was having a considerable impact on the global Muslim community, including the Indian Muslims of the North the Northwest, and Bengal in the subcontinent. Now, Muslim leaders like the Ali brothers, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, the Aga Khan in Bombay, and Said Amir Ali in Bengal, initiated what has been called the Khilafat movement, which Mr. M.K. Gandhi sought to incorporate into India's freedom struggle. The dedication with which Indian Muslims espoused the cause of the caliphate, which the Turks themselves had rejected, was puzzling. It was obviously a yearning for the heyday of Islam as perceived by them, even though the Turks themselves seemed to have other views. These Indian leaders petitioned Kemal Pasha to restore the Sultan, even assume the throne himself, but the pleas went unheeded. In fact, the poet Sir Muhammad Iqbal went so far as to suggest a legislative caliphate, but to no avail. The historian R.C. Majumdar has underscored that by endorsing extraterritorial allegiance of an issue Mr. Gandhi believed to be vital to the Muslims, he was subscribing to the view that they, that is the Muslims, even though they lived in India, were a separate nation. Interestingly, Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah and some other secular Muslim leaders were not that supportive and instead showed admiration for Kemal Pasha's leadership. In Calcutta, the Bengali Muslim poet Qazi Nazrul Islam sang paeans of praise to Kemal Pasha and to the young Turks like Anwar Bey. It was a bit like a Bengali version of soft power, as a matter of fact, directed at Turkey's new nationalist leaders. The point is, Indian Muslims, including the forebears of the current Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, resonated with the two distinct traits of Turkish influence, the imperial and the modern. By India's partition in 1947, Turkey was seen as a beacon of secular Islam, the values with which subcontinental Muslims at that point in time wanted to shape their lives. Politically, post-India partition, Turkey was an ally of the territories which today constitute Pakistan and Bangladesh. As sovereign nations, their politics, instead of being confined to the subcontinent, were now being played out on a global matrix during the US-Soviet rivalry of the Cold War period. Now, those days, the influence of impoverished Arab nations on South Asian Muslims was minimal. Intellectual interactions were almost non-existent. It was thought, the Economist had said, magazine, that no Gulf Arab reads a book for fun. Of course, that's not true of Levant, which was different, which gave birth to the ilk of, say, Edward Said and Khalil Gibran. But somehow the Indian Muslim culture was imbued more with Persian, that is Farsi, and Turkic influence rather than Arabic, whether during the Mamluk Sultanate or Mughal imperial era. Turkey and Iran had opted for the West in the Cold War lineup, opposed to the Soviet bloc or the non-aligned movement. Note the Central Treaty Organization, CENTO, and the Regional Cooperation for Development, which is the RCD, groupings of which Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan were most enthusiastic members. In fact, then Pakistan Prime Minister H.S. Sarwardi, once Premier of Undivided Bengal, mocked the NAM, stating that 0 plus 0 equals 0. In then East Pakistan, the two major foreign dignitaries to have ever visited Dhaka, then a provincial capital, and I recall seeing them as a cheering schoolboy lined up on the roadside, were Emperor Reza Shah Pahlavi of Iran and Prime Minister Adnan Menderes of Turkey, who, as you know, was later overthrown and executed following a coup. The elites in Karachi, Lahore, and Dhaka displayed secular traits in their behavior pattern. And importantly, the army in Pakistan was intensely Kemalist, secular to the bootstrap. Field Marshal Ayub Khan as a case in point. The same values appear to have percolated to the Bangladesh army after the nascence of the new republic in 1971, evidenced in its commander-in-chief, General Emir Osmani. Now, when the pendulum swung back in Turkey and the authorities turned to Islam, There was also great empathy in Pakistan and Bangladesh. True, Arab nations by now were wealthy. They had become a source of both material and spiritual nourishment through also employment of vast numbers of South Asian Muslim workers. The Saudi king was deeply respected as a keeper of the two holiest shrines of Islam. Yet, some Arab leaders were being viewed as playing second fiddle to the Western powers, whose conflict with the Muslim world and support for Israel had eroded their popularity and dented public acceptance in this region. Now, to the man in the street among many South Asian Muslims, Erdoğan seemed to stand out as a hero. And Ankara made full use of the movie series Ertuğrul to stir up public spirits. The Turkish government launched a state-endorsed vigorous promotion of Islamic revivalism. However, some Turkish intellectuals, like the writer Orhan Pamuk and some moderates in the Turkish society, opposed it, as they did the remosking of Hagia Sophia, for instance. But by and large, South Asian Muslims felt inspired by Ertuğrul, just as the Indian television serial Ramayana had influenced the burgeoning Hindu nationalism in some political quarters. Prime Minister Imran Khan publicly praised the movie, describing the hero as Ghazi or victor in war, and recommended it to the Pakistanis. It was also translated in Urdu. And Bangladesh, the series also drew a large audience as well. There are those who believe that it serves the purpose of diverting the populace away from the stricter Wahhabi variant of Gulf Arab Islam towards a more tolerant Sunni belief system. As a matter of fact, it is also true of countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, and even the Maldives. These point to a sort of incipient bonding among non-Arab Muslim nations on the global scene at this point in time. Now, in Bangladesh, following Turkey's recognition of the country in 1974, close collaboration continued through the period of all governments, both in Bangladesh and Turkey. I myself had a very close rapport with my Turkish counterpart, Foreign Minister Ali Babacan. In New York for years, Bangladesh mission to the United Nations occupied 2 floors of the Turkish representation, which contributed to the close ties in the multilateral fora between us. However, there was a slight bump in the relationship when Ankara criticized the sentences passed during war criminal trials in the early years of the Awami League-led government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. But in 2016, Sheikh Hasina issued a statement in strong support of President Erdoğan after the failed coup against him. In return, President Erdoğan had lent the strongest possible endorsement of Bangladesh on the Rohingya refugee crisis, both at the United Nations and at the Organization of Islamic Countries. The First Lady of Turkey visited the refugee camps in Cox's Bazar to demonstrate her and her people's solidarity with the Rohingyas. Trade has received a fillip. Dr. Baba mentioned a figure of $1 billion. I understand they're trying to hit 2 billion. Not that that is the most significant factor in the relationship. Importantly, a new government-to-government defense memorandum of understanding was signed between the two countries on 21st June 2021, following the visit to Ankara of the new Bangladesh Army Chief of Staff. Now, this will help Bangladesh diversify sources of military procurement, and Turkey, being a NATO country, would be particularly a welcome supplier of modern weaponry. For a variety of complex reasons, thus, Turkey is an emergent, significant partner for Bangladesh. Now, this relationship in Turkey and Bangladesh provides a genuine sense of comfort to Bangladeshis, and the government is quite happy to go along. Turkey for Bangladesh seems to satisfy the requirements of both nostalgia and necessity. These current cross-regional relations are being carried out on the backdrop of rising tensions between two superpowers, the older ones, United States, and the rising China. The world seems, sadly, poised to enter the phase of Cold War II. Now, these are being exacerbated by alliance buildings by the rivals, increasing the possibilities of wider conflict of both kinetic or non-kinetic varieties. Bangladesh may not be a key protagonist, but given its positive economic and socio-political indices, it is a noteworthy international actor. Its foreign policy primarily has a development orientation with a sharp preference for conflict avoidance. As a plethora of security alliances appear to be emerging in and around the region, this is not necessarily an easy maneuver for Bangladesh. Now, in regional organizations in South Asia, SAARC appears to be failing due to the Indo-Pakistan rivalry. Multilateralism and plurilateralism have always been important platforms for Bangladesh for the conduct of its foreign policy on an international stage. Now, as ties with Turkey widen and deepen, a forum of potential importance to Bangladesh which increasingly comes to the fore is Developing 8. It's an economic grouping, as you're aware, comprising the 8 largest Muslim majority countries, which is headquartered in Istanbul. It may be time to resuscitate it. Like any country, Bangladesh needs friends from among key global actors. Turkey satisfies the bill in diverse ways. Navigating through the rough waters of current international politics will doubtless be a challenge for Dhaka, but I believe that Bangladesh diplomacy has adequate intellectual resources to pick up the gauntlet. So, Ertuğrul, in spirit and influence, if not in body, has crossed the Bosphorus, the Euphrates, the Indus, and the Ganges, and has truly traveled east. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhry, for giving us a large historical tour into the many episodes that kind of set the stage for contemporary dynamics and contemporary geopolitical dynamics. With that, we turn to Dr. Farooq Solaria. If you could now join us, unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Last time, I think it was not from my side. I couldn't unmute myself anyway. Sorry for the disturbance. Thanks a lot, and indeed honor to be on this panel. I would just focus on Pakistan as a case study, and I will speak mainly about media, the topic I was supposed to speak. But I will briefly start with the growing influence of Turkey in Pakistan. Last about 1 decade, all of a sudden, Turkey is an important player on many fronts, actually, mainly economics that usually we look into, culture, most importantly, and politics as well. Economics is not yet a very big front. Turkey is not one of the major trade partners for Pakistan. The mutual trade is not yet even $1 billion. It is growing, but not really there as compared to China or USA, EU, which are, and a couple of Gulf countries, which are the main trade partners. But this is growing. And there are at least 17 Turkish companies, firms, multinationals, which have invested in Pakistan in such sectors as energy and finance, but most importantly, construction. Construction is the main concern so far, I think it seems, for a Turkish bourgeoisie that Dr. Baba was talking about as well. And this very much reflects also the kind of bourgeoisie AKP represents in Turkey. Politically is, I think, much more important because Turkey is trying to assert itself as a sub-imperial country, as a rising sub-imperialism at least, and it's the Ottomanization of its foreign policy as well is very much involving Pakistan. And Pakistan, on the other hand, is trying to look for some new international allies as well because of its own placement and recent political maneuverings where it has alienated itself from some of the Arab countries and perhaps the USA as well. However, the most important influence can be seen in the cultural field, especially media. Some films have also arrived Pakistani cinemas recently, but they have not been as big hit as some of the television productions in Pakistan. Also, tourism is growing, but I'll mainly speak about media. It all started, I would say, in 2012. There was a Turkish serial called Ishq-e Mamnu, Forbidden Love, which took Pakistan by surprise. It created all TRP records at the time. It was the most popular TV play in recent Pakistani history of television ratings. And it has only been surpassed only recently by Ertuğrul. So in last 10 years, the most popular, the biggest hit, I would say, in Pakistan have been 2 Turkish serials. And meantime, there were few more television serials such as Mera Sultan, this television serial about Emperor Suleiman, Qasim Gul, Fatma Gul, sorry, and a couple of more serials. They were also quite popular in Pakistan. And it is also having some sort of impact on Pakistani middle classes, which are increasingly going to Turkey for their holidays, because Turkey for last about 10 years has also become a popular destination. Okay, there are other reasons. It is difficult to get European visas, etc. But also, Pakistani middle class is not very different from this new middle class in Turkey itself, which is very neoliberal, but also, always ready to be expressing its piety in every possible way. So you can live with neoliberalism of the Erdogan style or Imran Khan style and be very good Muslim at the same time. And I think all these projections, these cultural, economic, political projections of Turkey in Pakistan, they are very much reflective of its sub-imperial, growing sub-imperial role, which I won't go into really any big details. I will just focus on television now. And I will try to explain why these Turkish serials have been very popular in Pakistan. I think there are a couple of reasons, at least 3 reasons that we can look into. First of all, because of the changing television spectrum in Pakistan, there was this demand for new television content. Pakistan had a state monopoly over a television system until the start of this century. And under the Musharraf dictatorship at the start of this century, there was this liberalization of airwaves. And now we have over 80 channels at least. And about 10 of them are dedicated to so-called entertainment. All of a sudden, therefore, huge demand for new content. Initially, the Pakistani television channels, they bought content from India. Also, because of the historical reasons, linguistic proximity, also for the fact that Indian films have been historically popular in Pakistan, all these factors and many common cultural traits. Indian content was very popular for, say, initial 10 to 12 years before Ishq-e Mamnu. However, there was also all the time a criticism from the right-wing political parties and right-wing press on the Indian content. It was presented as a cultural invasion of Pakistan by India. I think a combination of these factors made few channels think about the Turkish content. Hence, Ishq-e Mamnu, which was first aired on a channel called Urdu One, which basically translates, it imports content from different countries and translates into Urdu. It is dubbed into Urdu. And Ishq-e Mamnu was one of them, which became very popular in Pakistan. So this was like the first, perhaps, demand and supply kind of understanding, which brought Turkish content to Pakistan. Then, of course, there was further economic factor. The Turkish content is much more economically feasible and profitable for the Pakistani channels. For instance, one episode of Ishq Mamnu or any other Turkish series would cost a local channel roughly $2,000 to $3,000. And if you are doing a local production, a Pakistani television production, it will cost at least 3 to 4 times more than the Turkish TV serial per episode. So this was huge cost for Pakistani channels. This also made the Turkish content popular with the bosses, at least, not just the viewers. Thirdly, and most importantly, I think it was the cultural capital of Turkey, as my colleague was speaking earlier, in South Asia and Pakistan, which really helped popularize the Turkish content in Pakistan. First of all, I think the Turkish content had a sort of novelty about it. It was very, very novel. Pakistani audiences were used to Hollywood or British content, both in film and television, or Indian. This was all of a sudden something very new, very novel. The acting techniques, the production quality, locations. I mean, it was alien yet very familiar because of the Muslim cultural aspect of it. It was Western yet Muslim. So this very interesting dynamics perhaps appeal to large sections of the TV audiences here. Secondly, the grandeur and the glamour that is there in Turkish soap operas is actually missing in Pakistani soap operas or television serials, as we call them. Pakistan is considered one of the good countries. The locally produced television serials have been quite historically popular, still are some of them very popular. But this, kind of glamour that is there, this big budget kind of drama production is missing in Pakistan. This was perhaps yet another factor which popularized the Turkish content in Pakistan. Thirdly, the Turkish soap opera is able to pursue topics which are otherwise taboos in Pakistan. For instance, in Ishq Mamnu, they slightly touch incest, which is perhaps impossible to discuss in a Pakistani television production. Hence, it was digested by the audiences as well. Fatima Gul, it's a story of a rape survivor in a Muslim culture. Okay, there have been films from India where they have shown rape survivor, but that is seen as a sort of alien Hindu culture, even if it's neighborly, but okay, that's another kind of culture. In fact, it's the other culture. India is otherified in Pakistan. So, okay, you accept it. Here you have a sort of Muslim brotherly country, and their girl is struggling as a rape survivor. And it went on. There have been attempts to broach such topics on Pakistani serial screen as well by Pakistani TV drama, but huge hue and cry. And in some cases, such plays had to be shut down after a couple of episodes. And finally, I would say the nostalgia. All of a sudden, the Pakistani audiences can relate to great Muslim past of Turkey until 80s and 90s, particularly because of the Afghan jihad. The past, which was glorified, the great Muslim past, was largely Arab Muslim past. The culture was Arabified. Now there is another glorious past that people have discovered, which actually belongs to Turkey. So this is, I think the last important thing to understand the popularity of Turkish soap operas in Pakistan. I will now, final thing, I will look at the consequences of the Turkish content in Pakistan. One, it has displaced the Indian soap operas, the Indian cultural productions in Pakistan. It has not, I mean, already because of this new television medium in Pakistan, largely the TV content is being produced locally. The equipment, the rest of the paraphernalia, it's all imported. Pakistan is really a dependent country in terms of media as well. But whatever content is imported, it is largely from Turkey now. It went down for a while, but with Ertuğrul, it is back. Secondly, it has actually very bad consequences for the Pakistani television production, because when you are importing the content, the local television drama industry is dying down. It's not really that bad yet, but I mean, if it goes on, so the usual impact of imports. So these are the consequences that we can look at very briefly right now. I will end here, and if there will be any questions, I will come back. But just to wrap it all up, I will speak about a couple of anecdotal things beyond my topic. I mean, when I was growing up, Turkey was an important country for Pakistan, being a Cold War ally. But it was always a brotherly country out there, away, not close to us, culturally, politically, whatever. But as the two colleagues have spoken earlier, with Erdogan kind of factor, now it's a new Muslim brotherly country. It is part of us. And last few years, I have spotted a Turkish cultural center in the heart of Lahore. There are many Turkish schools actually run by Gülen movement, now closed down under the pressure of Erdogan government. And Erdogan has emerged as one of the most popular global leader in Pakistan. When he was in Pakistan earlier this year, received by Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, and they held a joint press conference. I almost never agree with Imran Khan, but I agreed perhaps once with him when he said that if there were elections in Pakistan and Erdogan was contesting, he would win hands down. So this explains, the kind of Turkish influences on Pakistani politics and culture in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Solaria, for giving us sort of a closer look into the television industry and the dynamics behind it that has led to this growing industry of Turkish soap operas in Pakistan. Last but not the least, if we could turn to Dr. Umair Anas to speak about Turkey and India ties. Dr. Anas, if you could unmute yourself. Yes. And I think you have a presentation that would be shared by one or somebody from the events team. So if the events team, could you share the screen, and Dr. Anas, if you could turn on your camera and mic.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Dr. Amin, and my friends in Middle East Institute there, and all of my friends from India, Pakistan, and other countries who are part of this program today. So I think that all my three colleagues have already covered a lot of ground. So I have to speak a little, and I have to focus mostly on India-Turkey relations and some parts of the politics of Ertuğrul, and especially on the politics of Ertuğrul. And I would say that we have to look the kind of transformations which have come into Turkish television industry. In my presentation also, I have shown that Turkish television industry has massively changed. And it is not just Ertuğrul right now. If you see, in 2003, it was a drama which was translated in Arabic. And then in 2009, another drama, for example, in 2003, The Valley of the Wolves, which was about Israeli politics. Partially it covered that part, and Israelis were so much angry of that drama. if we have to make a story about Turkish television industry, we have to start it from there, because from the Valley of the Wolves, the Turkish drama had started making a mixture of politics and entertainment. Then in 2009, there was another drama. Its the name was Gumush, or in Arabic, it was translated as Noor. My MPhil dissertation was on this drama at that time when I was studying it at Jawaharlal Nehru University in India. There were many news that this drama had caused many family disputes and many divorce cases in the Arab world, because in this drama, first time the women were shown in a very empowered picture, and the Arab women, they started demanding from their husbands that you should behave like Muhammad, the husband of Noor. So this was a reason of dispute in the families. And when the last episode of this drama was shown on television, there are many news in Al Jazeera, in Arabia, in many other news portals that almost the streets of Riyadh and Cairo were deserted. Nobody was there. Most of the women and men, they were in-house to watch this drama. Then came another drama, Bin Bir Gece, or like Alif Laila, and there are many other dramas which have been produced. And Turkey has become a net exporter, second largest exporter of dramas in the global television industry after the United States. And if you see the Netflix and other digital platforms, you can find so many Turkish programs there. And not just historical dramas, but also thrillers, actions, and romance. And psychological dramas are also getting attention in this industry. And I was surprised to see that these psychological dramas are extremely powerful, and sometimes they are extremely dark and depressing. So it is very difficult to watch them. They are so strong and so stressing. But it shows that the Turkish drama industry and television industry is progressing very much, and storytelling is going to be in very perfection. As in case of this television drama, the Ertuğrul drama, you can see at least two features. The first feature is that they have the art of perfect storytelling for television audience. They have all elements of politics, religion, tribalism, history, Sufism, music, chivalry, feminism, romance, suspense, action. So everything is there. And plus, they have market Islam. By market Islam, I would like to say that they have when you know that your audience are in demand of some images which should be related to Islam and Muslimness or about identity, you can produce some kind of dramas for these hungry audiences. If you see global Muslim right now, after 9/11, Muslims around the world, they have been depicted as terrorist, extremist, bad, and in all negative pictures. So very apologetic Muslim audience has developed since then, all over the world, in Indian television, in Pakistani, I should also say, in most of the Western countries, Muslims have been pictured in a very negative way. So when Ertuğrul came, it was an unapologetic Muslim. It was the story was told in a very perfect way. So it convinced the Muslim audiences everywhere. At the same time, the professional part of the technical part of the picture movie making or drama making was so perfect that if you read the comments by Indian TV, just now you said you can't admit. If you see some of the comments made by Indian commentators, they have so praised the art of making this drama. They were surprised that Turkey has skills to produce so powerful dramas from technical point of view. They did not agree with the politics of drama, the messages of drama, but they praised the art of making such powerful dramas. So that is also part of that. About market Islam, I would also say that when you mix market and religion, you can produce some different stories which can be sold in different markets which are influenced by religion. For example, in India also in these days, you can see that there are a new genre which is coming about retelling the Indian history according to religious sentiments. We can call it the sentiment of Hindutva, sentiment of Hindu religion, but you can see that there is a large audience which want to listen these stories, and there is a strong Bollywood which is ready to make and produce these things. And sometimes these things are creating a kind of discontent. So there was a drama, there was a movie which was made about Afghanistan, and then Afghanistan officials, the president and other foreign ministry officials, they made an objection to Indian foreign ministry that such dramas are being made and they can affect or impact on India-Afghanistan relations. So when market and religion is going to be mixed, you can expect such kind of dramas coming from any industry. Let's come to the second part of my discussion on Turkey-India relations, and especially I would like to cover Turkey's India outlook. A book which I have edited on Turkey's Asia relations is going to come out from Palgrave later this year, hopefully. I have covered a lot of ground on Turkey's Asia relations, especially with Pakistan, India, China, Bangladesh, and other countries. During this work, I have worked a lot on archival materials in Ankara and archival materials in India as well. So on the basis of these, my previous studies, I would make a few important remarks on the state of India-Turkey relations, or in Turkey South Asia relations at large. We have to see there are four main outlooks which are in use in Turkish foreign policy. First is historical outlook, which is made by the British, Russia, and Ottoman triangle of competition during the imperial time. So Russia was appearing as a major threat for the British Indian government, and Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire at that time, was seen as an important ally of the British imperialism to stop the reach of Russia from Indian borders. So if you see the literature, Russia was a threat at that time. Second, anti-colonial outlook came when the Khilafat movement started, and the Ottomans supported Indian revolutionaries, and they also helped the establishment of the first Indian government in exile in Kabul, which was led by Raja Mahendra Singh in 1915. So after that, Kemalists, they came, and they also continued the support of Indian independence fighters, and he remained in support of a modern secular India in that sense. Then the Cold War outlook, in which Turkey became a formal part of the Western alliance, and since then it is a part of Western security architecture. And in the post-Cold War era, Turkey failed to evolve a working perspective for most of South Asia relations. If you see that Turkey has been remaining disconnected from South Asia for a very long time, and even in the Cold War time, the relations with Pakistan were mostly transactional, and they did not go beyond security cooperation. They did never go into the domain of economics and culture and other cooperation. While with India also, their relations remained transactional, but in the post-Cold War period, you can see that India-Turkey relations have improved, at least in economic domain. So trade is much better there. India is the second largest partner of Turkey after China. And now Bangladesh is becoming the third largest partner of Turkey in terms of trade. One of the most important problem with Turkey's South Asia relations is that Turkey does not have that kind of economic competitiveness to be with these countries. For example, if you see Indian export is largely, India has a very large knowledge-based export material. Software industry is becoming large and large. The computer industry, IT industry overall has expanded exponentially in India. But if you see the Turkish exports, they have not transformed their economy into that domain. So India-Turkey cooperation has not come into this field. And so Turkey is not in position to receive more exports from these countries. And Turkey has to stop to a point where it cannot bridge the trade deficit between Turkey and Asia. And especially the trade deficit between Turkey and China is becoming a burden on Turkish economy. And someday there will come a point where Turkey would demand that there should be some mechanism to bridge these gaps. And with India as well, these things are going on. With Bangladesh, their trade is going on with some parity. With Pakistan, it has not even started. And Pakistan does not have much to offer in terms of trade and economy to Turkey. So if you see the possibility of Pakistan and Turkey relations going up, is still very much I would say the picture is not very good. At the same time, Pakistan is still to decide whether it has to go with the Persian Gulf or the Saudi Arabia or with Turkey. So whenever there is a strong pressure on Pakistan to choose between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, Pakistan will choose and has to choose for many reasons Saudi Arabia over Turkey. So there are some opportunities which Turkey is exploiting in its relations with Asian countries. For the first opportunity is that in Turkish foreign policy discourse, you find that the West is disintegrating. The West is changing. The West is no longer a West. France is trying to have its unilateral position in the world. Britain wants to be more global, and Italy wants to have its own feature. Other countries like Germany and other Western allies, they want to improve their unilateral profile. So they say, why should we expect from Turkey to remain loyal to the West at the time when all individual NATO members are building their own profile in Asia, and they are having good relations with China, India, and all other countries. For example, the US-China relations, or economic relations, have been exemplary even in the time of conflicts. So alone Turkey should not take the burden of being a Western country. So Turkey should switch or should diversify from the West-centric foreign policy to some other parts and should have relations with other countries. So this is one logic which is working in Turkish foreign policy thinking. At the same time, there is serious trust deficit between the United States, overall the Western bloc, and Turkey, especially what happened in Syria. It is like most of the Western countries, they demanded Turkey to play a bigger role in Syria. And when Turkey went inside Syria, all of them left alone, and they started working on a different agenda by supporting a Kurdish group which wanted to create a state inside Syria. So there is very huge trust deficit between the West and Turkey. So Turkey is working on, have to do something about it. Then there is another third aspect on which Turkey is working very much, that is experience of Erdoğan. Erdoğan has achieved so much experience in dealing with great countries like Russia, China, and from the diplomacy of Astana process, he has learned a lot. And especially in conflict resolution mechanism, the way he has worked in Russia, in Syria, and in Nagorno-Karabakh,
it has given him a lot of diplomatic experience, a lot of strategic experience. So he in this way, he has learned how to deal with non-Western great powers, and he is working on these experiences more. Apart from that, humanitarian diplomacy is also very strong. And then the most important thing which Erdogan has and should be credited for that is the rise of defense industry in Turkey, and especially the popularity of drone, which whose performance has been tested in Libya, in Nagorno-Karabakh, and in Syria. So Turkey is having in hand something with which Turkey can expand its relations beyond the West. Now, the challenge with India relations is that the first challenge, in my personal opinion, is that if you see the Turkish strategic community and policy community here in Ankara or Istanbul, I don't see much interest about South Asia per se.
Dr. Anas,
You don't find it.
Sorry, Dr. Anas, we're about ending time. So if you could just wrap up.
Yeah, I will just conclude in 2-3 minutes. So I don't see enough expertise in about India, about Pakistan, about Bangladesh. You cannot find even a single expert of Indian politics or Pakistani politics or Bangladeshi politics in Ankara or in Istanbul. So there's not much interest in learning about the region. And there is a huge knowledge gap about South Asia, which Turkey must cover. At the same time, this gap is also in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. I cannot see any Bangladeshi or Pakistani expert on contemporary politics of Turkey. You can find many Pakistani and Indian experts about Ottoman time and about the Kemalist time, but not about the contemporary politics. So this is a knowledge gap which is there. Second, Kashmir is a major issue on which India and Turkey have huge differences, and Turkey has to do a lot to convince India what exactly does it want from its Kashmir activism or Kashmir diplomacy of Kashmir. So as long as there is no confidence building on this issue, I think that relations between the two countries are going to be in a state of confusion. Then the third question is about technology transfer, and there are many issues on which Turkey and India can cooperate, but they are reluctant to transfer technology and transfer the experiences which they have. The opportunities which I see between India and Turkey is that they have shared perspectives on Afghanistan, they have shared perspective on China's aggressive expansion in the world, and the third most important aspect is that Turkey is going to remain part of the Western security architecture. Turkey is not going to leave NATO, Turkey is not going to leave its European ambitions, and Turkey is going to remain there. So Turkey's association with the West is going to there, which is going to help India in terms of not in terms of only democratic politics, but also to contain China and China's expanding influence all over the region. So these are some aspects on which Turkey and India can cooperate and can build upon. So these are few remarks which I wanted to make on the issue of India and Turkey relations, apart from the politics of Erdogan. So I will stop here. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I will see what I can talk on during question and answer.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Anas, for this. This is it's a vast topic, sort of giving us a brief overview, and hopefully whetting the appetite for our audience to ask further questions. We will now turn directly to the question answer session. If anyone has any questions, I would prefer that if you could send it to the MEI events team, and they will forward it to me, and I can then ask the speakers about it, or if you wish, you can raise your hand and ask directly as well. So while the audience kind of like percolates, the questions percolate and the discussions percolate, I want to start our discussion by perhaps talking about what was at the core of even the call for putting this together, in terms of looking at contemporary relationships in light of a longer history. Dr. Chaudhry, perhaps you highlighted that there's these several stages to this history, be it the 1920s post World War I or interwar era with the Khilafat movement and then the Hijrat, or the Sito and the Cento era, or even earlier, if you go earlier with the Mughals and the Ottoman Empire. Dr. Chaudhry suggested that there was that this long history gives us a diverse, or gives people a diverse platform to choose from in forming their own political agenda or forming their own sort of perspective on these ties. So be it can at the same time be modern, and at the same time it can be Islamic. Dr. Solaria, I think you touched on this as well. So I'm wondering if we could, perhaps starting with Dr. Chaudhry, sort of more abstract thoughts on what role does this sort of diverse history with multiple sort of layered relation give us in forging these relations?
Well, okay, thank you. It's absolutely true. I mean, the relations between Turkey, or Turkic culture and the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, have been so varied and so diverse that you can touch upon one or the other element in a very broad spectrum and build the linkages that you would want to. As I have said, that almost simultaneously during the pre-partition days, both the Kemalist position as well as the pro-Caliphate Abdul Majid position were very popular among the South Asian Muslims. And I've said that, you see, while on the one hand, even in Calcutta, someone like Amir Ali was pleading for the Caliphate to be in position, and the poet Nazrul Islam was singing paeans of praise to Kamal Pasha and Anwar Bey. So that's it. Right now, for instance, it is to the interest. You see, societies like ours, and we like to believe that we are secular in some ways, and we would like to keep religion a little distinct from politics, but we are certainly conscious and au courant about the kind of influence that religion as an ideology would have on our population. And Turkey is a bit of a safe bet in many ways. It's moderate Sunni belief pattern. It's a member of NATO. In many ways, intellectually, we also link to the West, no matter what. So at the same time, we are proud of our own identity, etc. So in many ways, Turkey fits the bill. You see, so that's it. You can really pick on what elements that you want to correspond to in a very broad spectrum of Turkish civilization and Indian civilization. And they have met across at many points throughout history as it does now. Thank you.
Thank you. If any of the other speakers, would you like to add in any point about sort of like how this diverse history perhaps lends itself to be utilized for whatever ends seem necessary at that time?
What I would like to say here, if Farooq Solaria would let me, I have been reading for a while about the Kemalist reforms in the last couple of years, how they try to diversify themselves or maybe detach themselves from the Ottoman past. Here in Turkey, one of the political rhetorics, perhaps gradually becoming heavier, is that the Kemalist reform period was some sort of a break from the Ottoman past. So when we are talking about the Turkish historical patterns, starting from the Ottoman background, stepping into the Kemalist reforms, and then stepping into Erdogan's paradigms, or let me put it in the other way, aims, we see there is a bit of a fluctuation. The way that Dr. Chaudhry told us about how Turkey was seen in the Middle East and also in South Asia and Asia was a result of this fluctuation. With the Kemalist reforms starting from the 1920s, when we come to 2007, maybe, it's a big period for a young republic like Turkey. Turkey's attention towards non-Western world was limited. And it's a two-way street. Non-Western world's perception towards Turkey was also limited. Turkey was known, but as a country which is quite pro-Western. And with this type of a fluctuation, let me put it in this way, with the increase of a non-Western world awareness, now Turkey is more well-known in the non-Western world and maybe more welcomed. Think about the Turkish position in Bandung Conference. Turkey, the founders of Turkey, the revolutionaries of the Turkish Republic were the main topics, some of the motivations behind the formation of the non-aligned movement. But when the actual representatives of Turkey went to the Bandung Conference, they were in the back burner, somewhere back there. No one really cared about their position and what they would like to say. With Erdogan's policies, we see there is a change. So the fluctuation was like that, maybe, regarding Turkey's relations with Asia. Let me put it in a general way. The problem is that there is like multiple tiers, as I try to conceptualize. And so far, we have been mostly talking about the cultural element. The cultural element is like a door to open, but what you would like to find behind that door, especially for the Erdogan regime, is not something cultural. Erdogan regime is looking for something more tangible, okay? And that is more about the economic gains and the financial gains. Now we are stepping into, as the Turks, stepping into some sort of a difficult terrain. Because when you are trying to achieve some economic gains, you need to be aware of a significant element, which is competitiveness. The competitiveness, in order to be a part of Asia, is a difficult one to deal with for the Turkish administrators. Competitiveness in any sense, including the military sense. Like, think about the Russian outlook towards South Asia. Particularly, let's say, Afghanistan. Turkey stepped into there, like militarily. If it gets into a problem with Russia, how compatible or how competitive Turkey's military forces or military arsenal would be against the Russians. We faced it as the Turks in Syria. So the starting is good. I have been hearing about how popular the Turkish soap operas, how popular the Turkish media products, their productivity, people's receptiveness, and all that in the region. But that's not what Turkey has been expecting in the last decade. The expectation is different. It's a good startup to have that popular cultural popularity in those regions, but that's not what the Turkey was expecting. It's a different expectation Turkey has been. And this is the linkage that whether we're going to develop that type of an image to deal with the competitiveness in the region and then become maybe a player in the region. Turkey is not that much of a player in the sense that is expectations for today.
Thank you. Dr. Anas, did you have your hand up? Would you like to join?
Yeah, I would like to add a very brief remark on this. The major problem in on literature which is available on Turkey and Asia relations, Turkey-India, Turkey-Pakistan relations, is that there is a strong religious framework in which Ottoman history or Ottoman politics has been defined. The politics of empire at that time, for example, it is not necessary that we can define the behavior of the British Empire from the perspective of Christianity. even though the ruler of the British Empire and a predominant, almost 99% ruling elites were Christians. But we cannot see the element of religion being used in defining the history of British Empire. But in case of Ottoman Empire, especially in South Asia, even Muslims, they wanted to see Ottoman Empire as the representative of Islam and Muslims. And they wanted to see the Ottoman Empire from the religious perspective very well, very much. On the other hand, how Ottoman Empire was defining itself was different. For example, in 1839, when the first Tanzimat period happened and many good reforms were taken, there was a discussion in the British Parliament, and they were appreciating that how Ottoman Empire is becoming a safe place for Christianity. And then they were comparing Ottoman Empire with Russia, that Christians are being suppressed in Russia, but they are much safe in the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire did not try to define itself strictly in religious terms, but many in between, especially the South Asian politics was of the kind which needed some religious frameworks, and then it came. Even today, the biggest problem of Turkey is that they have to overcome this reference of religiosity or religion in their politics, whether their politics is driven by religion or not. So if it is driven by religion, then it has to face the big question of 1947, which we say because of Islam or because of Muslims, Indian subcontinent was divided into India and Pakistan. So the bitter history of 1947 partition, it will haunt the Ottoman history as well. So for Turkey, it is good that they remain and they define themselves beyond the religious references, which is unfortunately being done from both sides.
Thank you. Dr. Solaria, would you like to join in too? Did you?
Thank you very much. I just need 2 minutes. I'll depart from my basic topic because of the overall, contributions. I want you to bring a couple of more things. Very briefly, I mean, it seems Turkey has been given a very good image all the time today. And while we are talking about Turkey and Erdogan, we should not forget Kurdish question either. We should not forget the victims of the Turkish drones. Drone is nothing to glorify. But again, mainly I will focus on the media productions. I think when market and Islam mix, it's a terrible mix. It's nothing to glorify. Ertuğrul is nothing to glorify. There were other sides of Ertuğrul as well, especially in the context of Muslim world. We need to look into the question of religious minorities. It was not popular among the religious minorities. At least Pakistani Christians silently protested. They can't protest really. Ertuğrul contributed to jihadi message. It's not just and just another soap opera. We need to be very careful about such productions, especially if we are discussing them in academic settings. And lastly, I would say mere because audiences are welcoming something or something is popular among audiences is not a justification for any play. Also, it's no justification if India has been doing or is doing XYZ, hence Turkey is also justified in doing XYZ. If Hindutva films are problematic, Ertuğrul is also problematic. This is what I wanted to briefly say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If I could also ask perhaps the panel more broadly, it seems to me that what's become increasingly clear or sort of agreement across the board is the one-sidedness of it all, perhaps, or sort of the mismatch in the aspirations and from both sides, where Turkey, it seems, is still more invested in gaining some kind of political or economic ends. But the other side is more invested still in seeing in Turkey a more ideological actor, perhaps a more cultural or more Islamic actor. So and this is not just in the present, but we see sort of elements of this in the 1920s as well, with the Khilafat movement, which largely remained a one-sided affair. So are we sort of destined to have this kind of, you know, mismatched dynamics in the future, or is there some way that there can be a bridge between it two?
Should I make some?
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah, thank you. One of the most problematic way of talking about Turkey is that if you see, the Turkish foreign policy was established much before most of the Asian countries became nation states. Turkey became a nation state from the Ottoman Empire right in 1920s. And its state politics were completely formalized, and a nation building was, there was no nation building at all. Rather, it was continuation of the Ottoman state in a reduced territory indeed. Unlike Asian countries were still struggling for their independence. And by 1940s, 1945, 46, 47 onwards, they started becoming independent, and then they started a process of nation building, a state building process. And another problem is in Turkish, in studying Turkey, is that, for example, we use this term jihadist or minorities or concepts like this. If we go back into during the Ertuğrul's time, it was not a period of nation state. It was a time of tribalism, imperialism, and you don't find the word like minorities in that time's literature. And if you see the history of Ottomans, it is quite interesting that, for example, I have seen many write-ups on the conquest of Istanbul. The relation between Ottoman elites and the Istanbul-based Christians at that time were so intertwined that many Ottoman sultans, they married with Christians of the girls of palace, and they had a lot of relations, personal relations with Istanbul even before the conquest of Istanbul. So the tension between Christianity and Islam at that time has been studied now after in the context of clash of civilization. So now we are recreating a history which may not exist at that time. So relation between Christians and Ottomans are different completely from what we have come to know today. So I would say that we have to be very careful in using the terms like jihadist for Ertuğrul now after 1,000 years, or terminologies like minorities, because minorities must be in a nation state. If there is no nation state, we cannot imagine of minorities. And that is why the concept of minorities become more complicated when it comes into in today's modern context. That said, one brief remark I would like to make. More than Turkey wants to project itself as a leader of Islamic world, I have seen the curiosity among the Muslims in India and Pakistan. They want to see Erdogan more as a caliph than Erdogan himself wants to see himself as a caliph. I have read many articles coming from Urdu-speaking people in India and Pakistan. They want to see Turkey at the top of Islamic world, everything. But if you see it in Turkey, you don't find, even among the elites of AK party, you don't find such discourses. So they are not talking in these terms. Religion in Erdogan's speeches or his elite advisors' speeches, you don't find enough of religiosity there. Rather, the religious people in Turkey who are conservative, you can see some kind of discontent among them that Erdogan is no longer that much religious. He's becoming more and more nationalist. So I think that we have to refrain from imposing something on which may not exist. And that is where the problem of language comes. Most of Turkey is a difficult language, and most of the Turkish, the people who are using the terminologies, for example, neo-Ottoman, Turkey is trying to impose or bring neo-Ottomanism, even without using it in right context. So there is a huge knowledge gap about Turkey that is leading to out of context discussions. And when I say market Islam, I use this because I see Turkey as a completely Western nation state, which is run by the logic of market, which is run by the logic of nation state, and by the logic of market dynamics. So Erdogan has to function within these limitations, and he has to create a support base for himself and create I should say, in Marxist term, a superstructure for himself to stay in power and to create a perception industry for himself. So he is using all these things. There is no judgment of good and bad, but the logic of nation state and democracy and capitalism is that we have to create a system of perception and politics along.
No, thank you. Dr. Ra, would you like to also sort of add in to this issue of mismatch? Are we sort of destined to see, you know, as Dr. Anas also said, that, you know, that with Erdogan being stuck in his geo-economic frame, or sort of in the market, in the pressures of the market, while South Asian states sort of aspire them to be, or sort of like push them to be more sort of ideological, religious, whatever you would like to call it. Is there a way out of this mismatch, or are we sort of stuck with it?
I'm guessing that the question is for me. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Two points that I would like to mention for your question. Firstly, if I didn't hear it correctly, if I heard it correctly, Ömer Anas said that that was not a nation-building process in the 1920s after the Ottomans. I have to say that I disagree, because since Mustafa Kemal stepped on Samsun, that was all his aim, to create a nation, a Turkish nation, Türkçülük, which is like Turkishness. That's all about his aim. All of his reforms and all that try to settle on this legacy. Today, when Erdogan is collaborating with the Nationalist Party in Turkey, MHP, people say that that's the reason why he is acting in a more nationalist sense. But the reason is actually that legacy. Nationalism, the Turkic nationalism in Turkey, has been always an indispensable part of the Turkish nationhood and nation building. Jihadism, any sort of religious components in the early 1920s were bypassed, pushed aside from this nation building. Turkishness, which was a little bit of a fiction, a bit of an artificial understanding in the nation building, injected into the nation. Ottomans were a multi-ethnic empire, and Mustafa Kemal tried to change it into a Turkic nation state. So if I heard it correctly from Ömer, he said that there was no nation building, everything was about it. The reforms were all about. And today, even in Ertuğrul, I wasn't a very keen watcher of Ertuğrul, but as far as I can remember from his fragments and stuff, Ertuğrul is something very Turkic, and Islam is kind of like following it. That's the first legacy. Second legacy is about the mismatch. The second legacy of the 1920s, which is still there, is Turkey's pro-Western attitude. Strategic building, alliance systems, foreign policy making, educational system is Western. And it is not that easy to shift it into a non-Western system because it is always working in the background. One specific example is a very current one, which is Afghanistan. We know that from the statements of the US officials, which I copied and pasted into mine in Afghanistan, US was not unhappy about Turkey's positioning in Afghanistan. For example, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Turkey, an important NATO ally and an invaluable partner in the region, and US wants Turkey to continue playing a role in Afghanistan. Turkey cannot completely detach itself from the West. The relations could be strained, which were in the last decade, but Turkey cannot completely detach itself from the NATO and the EU perspectives and all that and engage itself to the East. I don't think East wants that either. And Turkey, in that type of a bridging understanding, would be actually more useful for these two parts of the world. Okay? So these two legacies are still determining Erdogan's foreign policy. Yes, geoeconomics is very important, but geoeconomics is very important at the same time could only be useful if you can bear the competitiveness in the region. If you're a competitive player in the region, then you can use banned geoeconomics. Although we would like to use it, I think because of the great power game and the balance of power in the region, I know I'm talking a bit of a geopolitical point of view, Turkey is still it's a bit far reach, cannot really reach that competitiveness, that power. That would create that mismatch in today's foreign policy applications.
Thank you. Dr. Chaudhry, if you would want to add in, or perhaps even, I'm wondering.
Very briefly, if I may. A very interesting discussion. You see, the thing about Turkey, in my experience, it's all about perceptions. Now, it's not what Turkey really is about, but what you like Turkey to be about. I just followed what Dr. Baba was saying about Turkey being a European this thing. I've been milieux like in Geneva, when Turkey was negotiating European Union membership, all the Muslim Islamic countries were supporting Turkey in its bid for the membership of the European Union, because Turkey would be the conduit in some ways. So Turkey is a bit like the elephant, I mean, and the Indian blind men. I mean, you know, it's like when you touch the elephant, if you touch the tusk, it's smooth. If you touch the tail, it gives you a different feeling. So Turkey is a bit like, to us, the seven blind men or whatever of the rest of the world, Turkey is a bit like that kind of elephant. And it's my judgment, I'm a political realist, it's a comfortable relationship. I mean, it's a bit like motherhood. I mean, no one really is against her, you see. Unless you're a Bulgarian during the Kemalist period. So you see, it's a comfortable relationship which everyone would like to have. And would be my point in building a relationship with Turkey. And you can find elements in all of us which have common elements in Turkey, and you can relate to them. Yes, the fact that it is European is appealing to our elites. The fact that it's even Kemalist, I mean, our army, for instance, is still very much of a Kemalist mode. So all that we borrow from Turkey, we see Turkey in different perspectives. It may really be that, or it may not be that. I mean, you know, in Singapore, in 1917, there were British troops, Indian British troops, who refused to fight for the British and were actually executed in mutiny here. So, you know, it sometimes presents us with all kinds of different challenges, but it has always been like that. And this will continue like that, I suppose, into the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're about running out of time. I'm wondering if anyone would, I mean, since Afghanistan is sort of the hot topic right now, if anyone would want to add sort of brief comments about how they see the sort of developmental projects in Afghanistan shaping the relationship between Turkey and South Asia. Sort of anyone from the panel, if they would want to address it. I mean, we have a couple of minutes.
Can I comment for a bit on this, Afghanistan?
Yes.
Okay, about 3-4 years ago, a Pakistani colleague, Mr. Javed Barki, was a finance minister of Pakistan. Myself and Riaz Hassan, a sociologist from Australia, had written a book on Afghanistan, the next steps. And there, in the final chapter, we had foreseen a very important role for Turkey. Those days, this was 5 years ago, we thought what would be needed when the transfer takes place. We did not see it in this way that the Taliban would take over completely. We thought Taliban would have a major role. We thought Turkey, as Turkish troops, for instance, as peacekeepers, the kind of role that Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, etc., have played the rest of the world as peacekeepers. Even control of certain infrastructural units. I mean, later on, remember the airport thing came up. We thought it would be good for Turkey to take that up. And we thought Turkey would be acceptable. And during our little bit of research, whatever we did for the book, we came to the conclusion that was the case, whether it was the Taliban. And we have negotiated directly with the Taliban in Bangladesh even during our period in government, which is 2007 to 2009, were receptive to the and as was the Karzai government to Turkey. So therein also, I thought I perceived a kind of acceptance on all sides. I don't know how it will play out in the future, but I still believe that Turkey would have and should have an important role in Afghanistan, even at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. We are unfortunately out of time now. So I would like to again thank all our panel members for joining us today and sort of enlightening us with your thoughts and sort of this heated discussion. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you to all the audience for also tuning in. Please keep in touch with both ISAS and MEI events, and hope to see you guys in the near future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.